lot of innocent people.
But my father always said
Better them than
the
us.
dropping of no, he said the dropping of the atom bomb saved his life because he was training for the invasion of Japan.
That's what I just said.
And
Better
he
them
didn't
than us.
and he didn't know whether he would be coming home alive. It was a toss up.
Uh, Getting off the subject for 1 minute. Did
We
you
can
watch six?
get off the subject for a lot of minutes.
Well,
It's our
another minute.
show.
Did you watch 60 Minutes yesterday?
As a matter of fact, yes, I did.
Did you watch that part about that priest?
Yes, I did.
I thought that was one of the most interesting and sad stories. And that man is a hero.
And you know what gets me? Why did they wait for him to find these mass graves? These people knew the graves were there. Why didn't they come forward as adults? As 11 and 12-year-old children, they couldn't. Their parents never came forward. Okay, when the Allies came through, when the Russians came through Ukraine, why couldn't they come forward and say that these are mass graves and thousands of Jews are buried here?
It wasn't just Ukraine. It was a lot of places.
It was, Moldavia, whatever,
Yeah,
but
Moldova.
but it was in like one of the offshoots of Russia, before Russia broke up.
Well, the reason why they didn't say it when it happened because a lot of these people watched it and they cheered when it was happening.
What could they do? Unfortunately, the Germans had guns. These people had nothing, but no one said anything
because they're all afraid to say anything because they were a lot of them, especially the Ukrainians, were involved in these murders.
That's why I'm saying why couldn't
Exactly,
after the war,
that's why.
But when the children grew up and became adults, why didn't they say anything? Now they're 80 years old and 88 years old and over 90. Okay, and now because this French priest is coming forward, okay, he's being taken to these places and the people are saying, "Yeah, I stood here with my mother and I watched them murder Jews."
Yeah, some of those places were known. Actually, he said a couple of them were known, but they're not honoring them or putting any kind of stones there.
How can you?
Because they're afraid they're going to get looted.
Well, the thing
grave
is,
sites.
well, I'm sure those people had nothing of value. Number one, okay. The only thing they had were the clothes on their back.
And the gold teeth, which was being pulled out of them.
Well, if they were in a concentration camp, yeah, the gold was pulled
out. Also, these when they killed them, didn't they say they were sending people into the graves?
I don't know.
I thought he said they were sending people.
Like the rabbi said, once the graves are once the people are put in the ground, you can't dig them up again. You can't move the bones. So there was no way they could identify any of those people. That's why it remained a mass grave. All they did really was count how many bodies whatever bodies they could to try to come up with an accounting.
And they said they could tell when some of the people died from asphyxiation, that they were still alive when they got buried.
Right. They had their mouth open, and when they covered up with sand, the dirt went in their mouth, and they couldn't breathe. Went in their nose.
Just
terrible. And the world closed their eyes. It's not like it is now with the immigrants coming from Syria.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's yelling and screaming. Taking these number of thousands and that number of thousands. When the Jews were trying to leave Germany, nobody wanted them.
Well, I mean, in all honesty, I don't think anybody really expected such atrocities.
Well, but when...
I understand. I'm just...
Well, Hitler came to power in 1932, 1933. Okay? I'm sure there were foreign reporters, just like there are foreign reporters now, and there were people in Germany who reported exactly what he was saying, and he was blaming the Jews from the beginning. But the world didn't care.
Yeah.
Who cares about a handful of Jews?
Okay, we've got a caller. Good evening. Who's calling? Hello? Can you hear us?
Hello?
Yeah, can you hear us okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, who's calling?
Hey, this is Ed. How you doing?
Hi, Ed.
Ed, how are you?
All right.
All right, long time no hear.
Yeah, it's been a month or so, huh?
Yeah,
Yeah,
So how's that's good. How you guys been doing? All right?
we're doing good, thank you.
we're trying. I hope it's good for
That's
you.
good. What's that? Yeah, it's still going. I mean, there's always
Atlanta,
ups and downs,
you're from
you know.
Atlanta, right?
That's life.
Ed, you're from Atlanta,
That's it,
right?
man. No, I'm from Orlando. Yeah, Orlando,
Orlando,
Orlando.
Florida.
Okay. Couldn't remember.
Orlando, in Florida. Yeah. Now, in my area, I had a good friend that was running on the Libertarian Party for Congress, but I don't know. There's a lot of infighting in the Libertarian Party, and he just got fed up and gave up his campaign, and the other people from that county dissolved their little membership thing. But that's parties. Parties are that way. They're like pretty corrupt, even if it's a small party, like the Libertarian. But if you get bigger, like the Democrats and Republicans, those guys are so corrupt. It's unbelievable.
Well, you know what happens? Everybody starts out idealistic. And if you're fortunate enough to become elected, you realize that you have to play a game, the game of
Right.
politics, okay? And nobody played the game better than Lyndon Johnson. Okay, Lyndon Johnson, because he spent so much time in Congress and Senate, knew how to twist arms and how to get things passed. And at least back then, you had people talking across the aisle. Now, nobody even talks across the aisle anymore.
Well, Clinton got some things done, but
Yeah, but not. To me, it's like these guys are. It's ridiculous how huge and monstrous our government's become, and we need to slash it and really get rid of half the programs they got and redirect the other ones more properly to the people that really need it. But I don't think it's ever going to happen because we get more to corporate welfare than we do for social welfare.
yeah,
Well, that's the name of the game, after all. And I'm not doing this to single out Republicans, but the Republicans talk about the job creators. Well, we've heard that for so long, trickle down economics, but it's not trickling down.
Yeah.
If you could point to
Right.
if you could point to a Wall Street executive who gets a golden parachute of $67 million, while in our local news, well, not local, but in our Long Island newspaper here where we live, they printed salaries of retiring police officers, and they're complaining that the police officer is retiring with a salary of $70,000 or $80,000 because he got overtime the last 3 years. Okay, how do you compare $70,000 to somebody who gets $67 million? Okay, you don't hear about that. They talk about it once and then it's dropped.
well,
Yeah. Well, again, too, a lot of it comes from, the misuse of the whole, a single monetary system, the Federal Reserve. They print money up so much and it just goes to the rich. And, if we had decentralized currency like we did back in the 1800s, we wouldn't have this big problem.
Well, we didn't have as big a country back then, and we didn't have the manufacturing back then that we have now, and we didn't have a world back then that we have now.
yeah.
Really.
Right.
Well,
And we didn't have centralized banking that allows it all go to the rich. And we had more competition on that aspect. There was free market banking back in those days.
well, listen, free market banking in this day and age probably won't work, I don't think. But what will
Well,
work
it is, and there are people that are using it. I mean, it's not going to work for everybody, but most people already sold into the Federal Reserve. But there's a lot of people that are bartering other ways.
the
I mean,
bartering.
there's like Bitcoin. There's like Bitcoin. Bitcoin's a worldwide currency. I don't know if you heard of it, but it's electronically run, and people accept that, and they're dealing with that particular currency.
But
There's other
didn't
funds. There's gold. There's silver. There's people that trade and get into barter associations. There's
Oh yeah,
people that, I know groups that live, like the farm in Tennessee. Yeah, they do trade outside with some currencies, but inside they direct and use more of a barter society.
yeah.
There's people moving in those directions. I mean, I realize that the majority of the economics are controlled, 99% of it's by the Federal Reserve in the U.S. The other countries and stuff, of course, don't have our currency, but, a lot of them are influenced by it.
Yeah, listen,
well, back in the 19th century, you had a lot of bartering.
yeah,
I mean,
Yeah, oh yeah.
you had
Right, and
farmer.
you didn't have there was no Federal Reserve. There wasn't the paper money that you know of today. There were more individual banks, and they knew the local people, and if they growing corn, they would lend them the money and
Exactly.
realize they're going to get part of the corn cart. And that's what I'm saying about moving back towards a free market economics again instead of this centralized command market system we currently have.
Well, I think what we have to do is get rid of the IRS first.
Well, that would be a good start too.
Yeah.
They both came to being in the 13th year of the 20th century. So, and I think the IRS was actually created shortly before the Federal Reserve, but they weren't far apart, than maybe a month or two. And yeah, I mean that definitely needs to go. There's no doubt about that.
Because the dollar,
tough fight.
right now the dollar is too widely circulated around the world, and it will take a lot to get rid of the dollar. But to get rid of the IRS, I don't think it would
get rid of the IRS, and then the dollar. I think people will learn once the IRS. There's other ways to trade, and rather than dealing through, a lot of stuff's going digitalized anyways.
Yeah.
So then people won't understand the dollar as much if they're not touching it and everything's on a card.
Yeah.
But they can see bartering and stuff, and possibly, Bitcoin and some other stuff might take off.
Yeah, because my feeling is, like I said, whatever you do, IRS got to go first. You got to have a kind of a value-added tax. Everybody pays the same amount on what they buy, and that's it. You don't buy, you don't pay taxes. You bought it, you don't pay taxes. That's the end of it.
Well,
And,
I heard something. I heard something very interesting on Bill Maher on Friday. Okay, say what you will about Bill Maher, but he said something about, he said the Republican candidates want to cut the number of tax brackets. And he brought out a good point. He said, we really need more tax brackets because he said the way things are set up now, he said somebody who earns $250,000, okay, pays, let's say, 40% of his income in taxes. Somebody who makes $5 million a year pays the same $40 million, pays the same 40%. And what Bill Maher was saying was, shouldn't there be a higher bracket for those people who are in the 1/10 of 1%, instead of them paying the same percentage, because it hurts the person making $250,000 more than it does the person making $5 million.
that's why you have one sales tax, and the millionaire is going to spend a lot more money and pay a lot more taxes.
Right. I agree with you when you're saying get rid of the income tax altogether, because the income tax is always going to be, aggressive, and it taxes production when it should be taxing consumption. That
Exactly.
makes you wealthier. You should tax consumption, not production. And then, because when you tax production, you discourage it. If you want to become a wealthier nation, you tax consumption. People will produce more because they won't be taxed on that. And then the consumption will go down, so that'll make the nation wealthier too.
And also,
that's why America grew so much and became so great. There really was never an income tax till after World War II. But after World War II, they gradually started implementing with their voting. I mean, there was